I read a lot as a kid. Up until high school, if I wasn't reading a book during the afternoon, it was because I was playing a video game or I was dead. Wait. But in order for you to understand, I need to take you back to the beginning. Welcome to kindergarten. The magic begins. What in the world is life? Is the only question asked to you in kindergarten that you still will not have answered by the time you graduate. Yeah, I could write my name before I started school. That's pretty fancy considering most people couldn't write the letter A. Could I read? No. Could I listen? Oh, absolutely. And listen I did. We had story time every once in a while. There were always short stories, usually trying to teach us about brushing our teeth or sharing, but even when I was 5, I was seeing them as more than just words on paper. Literature is art. And some might call it boring art, but to those with an imagination, the world in a book is much more interesting than the world we live in. I remember a story about a fish. He was a pretty fish, with a bunch of golden scales. Cool story, right? Well, everyone hated him. Why? Well, because they were jealous of his scales. So, what does the sad, beautiful fish do? Well, he rips the scales from his flesh and gives them to all the other fish so they can be beautiful too. You know, I'm sure they still wanted more, though. Fish can be greedy. But then after the teacher finishes, I'm thinking to myself, well, what next? What happens after the last page is turned? Does the fish die? Does he become a god? Do his new friends really care about him? I have questions. I've always had questions. That's why I became so, quote-unquote, smart. Yeah, and I didn't know how to read at the beginning of kindergarten, but by the end I was reading chapter books. Yeah, that happened in the course of 8 months. BAM! First grade! What is life? Still haven't figured that out yet. I can read chapter books. Did I tell you that? Probably. Frog and Toad was the best. I mean, this was before I found the Magic Treehouse and Goosebumps. This was high quality reading. Let me read this excerpt to you. Frog put the cookies in a box. There, he said. Now we will not eat any more cookies. But we can open the box, said Toad. That is true. That's pretty advanced for a first grader, right? Probably. Most people were still reading the big picture books with like 5 words to a page, but here I am reading quotations and dialogue and understanding it. It was first grade that I became better at writing as well. Hey, I can put sentences together to make them make sense. Also words. Words were really hard. I remember reading Frog and Toad books and seeing a few words that made no sense to me. One such word popping up in a class lecture. Now, the teacher had these flashcards with the words, and the teacher asks, "Hey, pronounce these words." And you know, most are easy. To, that, what, however. And then she drops the last one, and the word why appears. What is that? I screamed to myself in terror. I tried pronouncing it as waya, wayi, and vya. Nah, no, I'm not kidding. I actually tried to pronounce why, vya. And I kept thinking, why can't I say this? Why can't I get it? Why is this word so hard? And then she's like, the word is pronounced why! Why? I'm mad. I remember being mad. From that point on, if I ever saw a word I didn't understand, or if I saw anything that I did not understand, or it just didn't make any sense, it would bother me until I figured it out. Hey, I'm a second grader. Cool. I learned multiplication. Hey. English was actually not really focused on in second grade, but I do remember an incident that had happened to me one time. Now, no, I'm not talking about that time I wore my pants backwards all day at school. I'm talking about the time we were reading in class, and every time the teacher asked a question, I would literally answer within the next 2 seconds. She told me to stop. Stop, Shade, stop. Let the other poor souls answer. It's the only time in my young life that I felt really good about people telling me to stop being smart. Hey, is that 3rd grade? Cool. I'm a straight A student, a model student. My success in reading and my soon-to-be success in writing also got me placed into the gifted and talented program, and my life was smooth up until this grade. This was the grade when my life started to take a turn. I met this dude named Paul, and he introduced me to this concept known as procrastinating. It's a bit of a curse, and I still haven't found the antidote to it. Things like math and science became mushy for me because, well, it wasn't interesting. Hence me not ever doing the work for them. But for some reason, though, reading and writing still went strong, even though I had developed bad habits. And that just kind of goes to show how much English has meant to me. And, not much happened in 3rd grade other than that I became a jerk. 4th grade! This was the first time I had my classes split up. This was the first time I had more than one class per day. I have 4. Writing class, math class, a reading class, and then homeroom, which was just my writing class. My reading teacher, Miss Luna, was amazing. She inspired me to improve not just my reading comprehension, but my writing as well. Every Tuesday, she would have us write poetry. Poetry, which, until then, I thought had to rhyme. It doesn't. It really doesn't. She'd be like, everyone write a poem about this picture. And then a few classmates, always including me, would read what we wrote. And I'd read mine, and, people would think it was cool, and I'd have a big smile on my face. Then she'd read hers, and my face slowly does this. But I didn't like that. I didn't like feeling like I wasn't good enough. If I accomplished anything in 4th grade, it was a more deep understanding of words and how to put them together to make art. Middle school started in 5th grade for me, and this is when the idea of bullies came to fruition. I'd like to reference a Diary of a Wimpy Kid book, where Greg says that in elementary school your social status is determined by how fast you can run. And what he was trying to say is that people really didn't judge each other in elementary school because they didn't know how to. It was in 5th grade that my fascination with Goosebumps books is what consumed my free time. I also liked the Magic Treehouse books too, but I read all 50-something of them in 4th grade. I read a lot more because I didn't have a whole lot of friends to talk to, except for, Paul and a few others. Honestly, middle school was a bit of a drag. 5th through 8th grade were the same. I had teenager problems, social problems, and as time progressed, reading problems. And here's why I struggled with my reading. Reading was always my way of expressing my thoughts and ideas, but I had found other methods through actual art and band classes. I could express my thoughts better on a baritone than in a book. In 7th grade, I had read the Harry Potter series, Divergent series, the Hunger Games trilogy, the Ashes trilogy, Starters, and Septimus Heap collection. Septimus Heap collection is really good, by the way. If you haven't read that, you really should. In 8th grade, I don't recall reading anything, because of the alternate ways I had developed to let my mind flow. High school became a resting point for my creativity. I no longer was the smartest or the most creative. I was slightly above average, but other faces like Monique or Matthew, they were above me. I stopped doing band because of my anxiety disorders, and I stopped taking art classes because there was none to take. My high school sucked. I developed a new way to express myself artistically through theater. However, because of how much my school sucked, I moved to WB Ray CCISD in Corpus Christi as a sophomore. Yeah, Ray is huge. It's so big that Del Mar honestly sits in its shadow. They are right next to each other, I'd go outside the West Wing and Del Mar's right there across the street next to the freaking Taco Bell. Ray's a big school, and if you thought I felt average at my original school, then now I was depressingly average. That's partially true. The thing that makes it false is that I was still outstanding in reading and writing, despite me not doing it nearly as often. As a junior, I moved again due to family issues to Ingleside, where I felt slightly more advanced than I did at Ray. I'm in the top quartile of my class. I am extremely gifted in writing and theater arts, even though I don't really write anymore. But I can't forget what reading and writing has done for me. It was honestly the foundation for me as a person. I was built upon English. I'm still an amazing writer, and I attribute most of that to 4th grade. Actually, here's a poem that I wrote that I'm sure Miss Luna would be proud of. I wrote this for a theater prompt that was, write a short story about a jewel. It sparkles like fire, every curve, every cut. Admire. It comes from the heart, a place much darker than it. It comes from a man whose heart had torn him apart. She took his hand, gave him love, gave him hope. He had it all, the luckiest man in all the land. He carves a stone every day, upon every cut, and every groove is a play, of a man, of a boy, of a father and a son, who had all his dreams, who was number one. But after day one, it all went wrong, when his hopes were pulled down by the arms of the sun. He made only one stone, and his happiness, before he was all alone. And he wore it on his finger, for every day after day number one, to remind him of a time when his life was fun. He died all alone, and all on his own, and all that was left was this beautiful stone, that sat to rot, that sat to wither, till they pulled it out in its shine and its shimmer, and they saw that one day the man was a winner. Sparkles like fire, every curve, every cut. Admire. Came from the heart and was born in the dark.